Okay, so welcome everyone. It's 5:01. I think we can get started. We are so happy to have all of you with us tonight. I'm even happier to have Dr. Rita Ledesma with us. I'm going to hand it over to Maria Luisa to walk us through the translation piece.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por estar aquí el día de hoy. Para escuchar esta presentación en español, por favor, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, seleccione español para poder escuchar esta presentación. Mi nombre es María Luisa y mucho gusto. Gracias por estar aquí.
Thank you so much. And this is just my quick thank you to Glendale Unified and Glendale Latino Association, all of these wonderful people you see on the screen here. And I should add Sebastian Hernandez to this list as well. All of our student moderators who are volunteering to come in and ask questions and meet these wonderful speakers. We're very excited to have everybody. And we're going to get our speakers some really awesome swag bags. We've already had a couple more donations, so we're really excited about that. And let me bring up for you two things. This Saturday is our Adelante Latinos strategic planning meeting. Mr. Gallimore, can you go to the next slide? It's bright yellow. Thank you. This Saturday, it's on Zoom. It's from 9 to 11. Anybody interested in supporting our Latinx students, grades K through 14, please join us Saturday. We would love to have you. And you can get that Zoom link. We just put out flyers all over the district. And you can always email me personally and I can send you the link as well. This is the next slide, Mr. Gallimore, is all of our social media links. You can find all the information here for the rest of our speakers. We have 6 more speakers after tonight, and you can just keep in touch. We also just posted a phenomenal video of a Latinx poet today. It's amazing. You should go on and find it. It's really, really amazing. And then if you missed our last 3 speakers, we have links to their recordings. So Ana Guerrero, Yago Cura, and Laura Farber. So if you missed them, you can still see them. Our moderator tonight is joining us from Rosemont Middle School, a proud Spartan, correct, Dominic? Your Spartans over there? Good job. And we can't wait till he becomes a Falcon in a few years. But for tonight, he is our moderator. And then Dominic, and before I always forget this piece. Use the Q&A while Dr. Ledesma is talking to ask any of your questions. And then at the end, Dominic will ask her those questions and we'll get the answers. But for now, Dominic, if you can go ahead and introduce her and read her bio that we know is a little bit out of date. So she's going to correct some pieces. You're on, Dominic. Thank you.
Dr. Rita Ledesma, local dental pilot project. Ledesma served as chair of the Department of Child and Family Studies at Cal State LA for 6 years and was appointed to the University School of Social Work in fall 1995. She played a significant role in the development of the Masters of Social Work program and served as the first director of field education. She has participated in grant activities and developed a number of common community partnerships to address educational equity issues, as well as community campus interventions. Ledesma also worked with the Pat Brown Institute at Cal State LA, where she developed the Health Policy Outreach Center. She was affiliated with the Partnership for Academic Learning and Success peer mentoring program for many years. She developed the Pathways to Graduation program in the Department of Child and Family Studies. She also has a long history of participation on the Academic Senate and Senate Executive Committee at Cal State LA. As a lifelong resident of the communities immediately adjacent to the university, Ledesma possesses a deep appreciation for the role Cal State LA plays in nurturing the academic achievement of students and improvising local communities. Her academic and culturally focused social work career has been informed by her commitment to social justice, equity, and opportunity. Ledesma is a licensed clinical social worker and a member of the Oglala Lakota tribe, Pine Ridge, South Dakota. She received a BA, MSW, and PhD from UCLA.
Okay, Dr. Ledesma, it's all you.
Okay, I saw some interesting questions. Those are for later?
Yes, those are for later.
Okay, great. Well, I want to begin by saying how sorry I am that I cannot see the faces of the audience. I talked to Christine about this as well when we first chatted, and we know and I understand that this is part of what happens when we deliver everything through a virtual audience. But I do hope that despite the fact that you have to use your imagination, that you will use your imagination to think about some of the issues and some of the ideas that I'm going to share with you and as I move forward. I want to begin by thanking Christine Benitez, by Mr. Gallimore, by Ms. Mendoza, and everybody associated with the Glendale Latino Association, and board member Nairina Haberian for making this introduction. So I'm very grateful to have this invitation to spend some time with you this afternoon. One of the things that, let me just correct the record a little bit. I am currently serving as the director of a very large, in fact, it's the largest grant our university has ever received at $17 million. And what we do with this grant is we've trained students who do community-based practice. We work with USC to do dental screening on children and youth from the age of from when they're pregnant, when mama's pregnant with them and they're in utero. So we say they're 0 to 20. So all the way from infancy to young adulthood. We do dental screening. We also provide oral health education for families and for the clients that we serve and for community members. And we have a field training program for students at Cal State LA. So we do 3 things. We train people for future careers, we provide education, and we address disparity of oral health. Now, I want to define the word disparity, and disparity means when a group of people or an individual doesn't have the opportunity to have something that other people have. Right now in the news, because of COVID, there are lots and lots and lots of stories every day that talk about how much more challenging the experience of COVID-19 is for people who are poor, for communities of color, for people who are immigrants, and for people who have become unemployed as a result of the coronavirus. And we would call that, and these are people who suffer a great deal as a result of the coronavirus, but many times they suffer a great deal from the coronavirus because they were already suffering. Does that make sense to you? They were already suffering. Because they experienced other disparities in their life. Maybe they didn't have access to fair pay. Their parents didn't have access for fair pay for fair work. Maybe they have housing disparities in terms of they're unable to pay rent. They're unable to purchase a home. Maybe they experience educational disparities because they're unable to persist in school, or they attend schools, not GUSD schools, I know that for sure, but they attend schools where their education is different and of lesser quality than the education that other students their age receive. Maybe they experience health disparities. Their overall health status is different from the regular the majority of the population, simply because of who they are. And so with this grant that I direct, we are attempting to address oral health disparities. And the oral health is your dental disparities. And I bet if I asked you to raise your hands, do they have the raise your hand function, Ms. Benitez? But I would guess, even if you
Hold
don't
on.
have that.
Mr. Gallimore, are they able to raise their hands?
Yeah, they can, and then I can tell you a number.
Okay, cool. Please raise your hand if you or somebody in your family has only gone to the dentist when you had a dental problem. Or that's really when you go, when you have a dental problem. When you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. Out of the 44 people, how many people have had that experience? We don't know your name, so that's good. Or you know that people in your family, that's their experience. They only go to the dentist when they have a toothache.
So Dr. Ledesma, okay, it's still growing, sorry.
That's okay. But
We had, out of about 37 attendees, we had 8.
okay, well, that's a really great number because it's usually different. It's usually that most people, especially the people that we serve, because they already experience an oral health disparity, most people only go to the dentist when they have a toothache. And so, and the reason why I'm telling you this long story is because that's an example, that's the work I do right now. I lead, 60 people who try to address the disparity, this health disparity. But my introduction to disparities, I learned, but I didn't know that was the word for it. But I learned about the issue of disparity and the issue of things being unequal or unfair or unjust when I was in high school. For some of you, it was 1,000 years ago, but when I was in high school, and when students walked out of the high schools because the conditions in the schools were very unfair. And students walked out in protest. And that was my first exposure to what I will call community activism. And it was a high school teacher, Mr. Sal Castro, who played a very, very important role in supporting the students who walked out of high school, who walked out of the high schools in March of 1968. 4 schools that were in East LA, but then that movement spread to other schools in the nation and other schools in the Los Angeles region. So for some of you, that was a long, long time ago. It seems like, oh, that's the thing that you read in the history books. But the struggle for justice and the people who have worked to promote justice are the people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who just died, our Superior Court justice, our Supreme Court justice, and people like Mr. Castro, people like Dolores Huerta, people like Cesar Chavez. Those are the historical figures we think about. But it's also people like the teachers that you have at school and members of your own family. Think about that. Members of your own family. Their names may not be in the history books, but they may be people who work hard and work diligently to make a more fair and a more just world. Now, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, but I know that one of your board members, Miss Nahaberian, I know that she is somebody who has always worked for justice. Now we think, well, why would we talk about her? She's not Latinx. And this is Latino Heritage Month. Because when we talk about Latino Heritage Month, We should be talking not only about the Latinos and the Latinas who have achieved and who continue to achieve, and we should talk not only about our successes and our struggles, but we should also talk about our community. And in our community are lots of people and different people. And one of the things I learned from Mr. Castro was to feel pride in my identity. And I have two identities. I have an identity as a second generation Mexican and as an American Indian. I have two identities. So it's important to remember, I think, when we talk about Latino Heritage Month or any Heritage Month, that we all have histories, we all have elders who have made a contribution to the world. And for some of us, you know, the contribution that our elders made was to be involved in social justice activities. But for others, the contributions that our elders made was to work and to treat us kindly and to treat their neighbors kindly and to protect us. And so Latino Heritage Month is a way of kind of looking back at all the wonderful things that have happened in our heritages, but it's also a way and a reminder to look forward. So Mr. Castro, for me, represents my history, but he also represents a role model, because he was somebody who supported me as a young student, who encouraged me as he encouraged thousands of other students, but also modeled for me that we have a responsibility, if we choose, to work on behalf of making things better for the world and the children who follow us. So right now, I have two young granddaughters, and I'm not looking at you, but I know my audience is students. And I look at Dominic, who's not yet at high school, but obviously has leadership capacities. And I look at Dominic and I see to all of you who are in the audience, that I am counting on you to help make this world a safe and a fair place for my granddaughters, but also for yourselves and for your brothers and sisters and for your neighbors and your cousins and everybody else who is going to follow you. And so that leads me to another topic, which is to talk about values. So we think about the examples we have of leadership, the examples that we have of pursuing justice and fairness for all in the world. And then we think about the values. What drives us? What makes us? Values are those things that are important to our life, the things that shape our behavior, and the things that shape the way that we look at the world. And so Mr. Castro obviously had a value for respect, a value for education, a value for community, a value for relationships. But he also had a value that is associated with the American Indian tradition. And so now I'm bringing both of my traditions, my heritage, my Latino, my Mexican heritage, and my Lakota heritage. And in the Lakota world, there is an idea, and that many American Indian communities share, a value, which is the idea that we have to always think about the seventh generation. Always think about the seventh generation. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that when we are making a decision today, or when the people who are in decision-making positions are making decisions today, they should make those decisions not in their own interest or in the interest of their own family, but they should make those interests in the children who will come and who will be born in 7 generations. And so that means they should make decisions by thinking about what is the consequence of this decision in 140 years. So let me use a current example. So what if we all said, you know what, we're tired of wearing masks. We don't want to wear masks. Masks they make my skin oily, they're hot, I can't breathe well. You're not seeing me, but I wear glasses. They make my glasses foggy. I'm not going to wear a mask. And what if we all decided, you know what, we're not wearing masks. We're just not going to wear masks. We don't care about it. We want our freedom. And what if all of us did that, and every student in Glendale Unified, every parent in Glendale Unified, and in all the districts around Glendale, I live in Alhambra, and all the cities around, what if we all just decided we are not going to do it? We don't believe this. We're not going to do it. What would happen? Well, in the short term, people would get sick. In the longer term, people might really, really suffer. And in the longest term, if we think for 7 generations, some people might not even have a generation that follows them because people in their family will suffer and become ill. Now, this is a terrible, sad example. I know, I'm sorry to share a terrible, sad example. But I want you to understand that if we care about our heritages, no matter what they are, if we care about our heritage, and if we care and we respect the people who have come before us, and if we think about the lessons of Mr. Castro, Dolores Huerta, Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King, if we think about anybody that we admire, then we think about our values, then we have the opportunity to remember and to think about what will happen. If I take this action today, what will happen? Tomorrow, we often do that. We think about short term. If I don't do my homework today, what's going to happen tomorrow? I'm going to get in trouble. If I don't do my homework for a month, what's going to happen? I'm going to get really behind. If I don't do my homework for a whole semester, what's going to happen? I'm not going to pass. So we always know that there are outcomes and consequences, but we often don't think really long term. And in the American Indian tradition, people were encouraged in my grandfather's day, and my great-grandfather's day, and my great-grandma's day, and my great-great-great-grandma's day, they were encouraged to think long-term. And so I want to encourage you, even though your adolescents and your children and youth, and you should be protected, I want to encourage you now, when you think about heritage, to think about long-term. And part of thinking long-term is also looking backwards and thinking about, what did our parents give us? What did our grandparents give us? What do our cultures give us? And I think it's really important to think about that right now, because right now we're in kind of a pretty tough time. We're meeting virtually because we can't be in person. There is a global pandemic. And it is not fair, I think, that children should suffer or be afraid of illness in this world that we live in now. Children should not suffer. They should not be worried. Children should be protected. Children should be safe. And that's part of our heritage. Why did Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, why did they stand up and help to organize farm workers? because they knew that children should be protected, and they knew that families should be protected, and they knew that workers should be protected. Why did Mr. Castro stand up? And why did he stand with his students? Because he knew children needed to be protected. He knew his students and every student deserved a high quality educational experience and the opportunity to go to college and to go to university. So as you reflect and as you think about your place in the world and the world that we have right now, I also want you to think about the lessons from the past and think about how do you apply those lessons in the future? How do you apply those lessons for the future? Remember that concept that I talked about, that seventh generation that I just talked about? The ideas in that concept really have to do with ideas and values about caring and about love and about commitment and about kindness. So when we think about our heritages and we think about Latino Heritage Month, it's not just about mariachis and Mexican food and songs, although those are all really cool things and those are all great things to think about, but it's also about values. The values that our families have had, and the values that not only Latinos, the cultural community, but other cultural communities share as well. And those are kind of human values. We practice them in different ways, but the human values that we can live by, if we so choose, are values where we care for one another, where we look out for one another, and where we dedicate some of our lives or some of our activities to make things better for others, and where we try to make things fair, and where we try really hard to be as kind as we can be, and as compassionate as we can be, as understanding as we can be of others. And in order to do that, now I'm talking to you, to US students, in order for you to be able to do that, you have to live out the dream of Mr. Castro. And the dream of Mr. Castro was that every Latino student would go on to college and would succeed and would have educational opportunity. So you have to work hard to take advantage of the opportunities that you have. And I know it's hard, to do everything on Zoom. And I know it's hard, when the computer crashes or the internet slows down or the programs shift and change. I know that. And I can't tell you, even though I don't know you and I can't see you, I cannot tell you how proud I am and how much strength I get from knowing that all over Los Angeles County, all around me, all over Glendale Unified, there are students who are doing their best in really hard circumstances. And right now at this moment, those of you who spent today in a class setting, which could have been at home, which was at home, but could have been on the table, could have been in your bedroom, could have been in the kitchen, could have been on the sofa. I cannot tell you what strength you developed today in doing that can help you in the future and that will help you tomorrow. And tomorrow's the future. The success that you have today in navigating your schoolwork, in doing, completing your tasks, even in attending this, because, you probably didn't have to do this. You're choosing to do this. You might have been encouraged, but you're doing it. All of this is building strength. Now, you know, just how you do exercises and you get muscles, or you do exercises and you go from only being able to maybe run 1 mile to run 2 miles or 3 miles. The same thing kind of happens with our values. Just the way our muscles can grow from exercising, our values can grow from practicing them. So when you practice caring about others, when you practice, you know, just like your schoolwork gets better when you study and you practice, our life and our world can get better when we all try to make it better. And adults can make it better in a different way than children and students can. But I will remind you that part of the heritage of Mexican people and Latino people in Los Angeles County is the heritage of students who stood up, who said, this school system is not just, this school system is not fair, and they walked out 52 years ago. They walked out of their schools to make things better. Now, I'm not suggesting you walk out of your schools to make things better. I'm only citing an example of, in our heritages, we have experiences of people doing hard work, and sometimes that was youth that did it. I'm sure some of you know about Greta Bloomberg, the adolescent from Sweden who's like a fierce advocate for and a worldwide known speaker on behalf of addressing the climate crisis. And when we think about, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I can't even go outside because the weather's so terrible, and I have lung issues with the smoke. Where does that come from? If we let all the forests burn, if we don't take care of global warming and climate change, then what happens to the 7th generation that comes after us? What happens to those children? What world do we leave them? So we have to all do the work we can do when we can do it to keep this world safe for ourselves, for our families, and for those that follow. And I will tell you one more thing. I said the 7th generation, and that's 140 years in front of us. But I am the 7th generation because 7 generations ago, somebody was looking out for me and my interests in my Lakota side and in my Mexican side. You are here because probably somebody was looking out for you. Maybe they didn't know your name. You weren't even like a star in the sky yet. But maybe within your own histories and within your own families, you look back a couple generations and you see people who made sacrifices or who worked hard or who did the best that they could on your behalf to make the world better for you or to make your life better. And you have the opportunity to do that as well, each and every day. So I want you to think about values, your values. I want you to think about the values that are important to you. I encourage you to do that. And I want you to think about the heroes and the heroines that we've had in our history. And, you know, this is Latino Heritage Month, so let's look at them as well. But let's also think about the people within our own families who are heroes and heroines. Let's not underestimate them. We do have to think about social justice in this moment. And we do have to think about fairness and equity, where things have the same, people have the same opportunity. And this is, you know, a very complicated moment, historical moment that we are living through. There's an epidemic, there's poverty, there's homelessness, there's hunger, there's anti-immigrant rhetoric, there's racist talk in the world, there's an election, there's politics, there's a lot of unfair things going on in the world and unkind things going on in the world. But as you grow up, what you need to do, and part of embracing the positive cultural heritages that we all have, is to really think about you know, I really want to just encourage you to look around yourself, look at the world around you, look to your teachers, look to your family members, look to your friends, your aunties, your uncles, people in your community, and you think about, you know, kind of what matters to them. What are they teaching me that is good? You'll have opportunities to learn things that are not so good. And if we look at politics and we look at TV, we can see like, there's some things that are not so good that we can learn. And you have the right, and you can make a choice. Do you want to come from a place of caring or a place of unkindness? Do you want to live your life from a place of love, or do you want to live it from a place of hate or anger? Do you want to build a life for yourself and an educational career for yourself that allows you to move forward, or are you okay just being stuck in one place? These are hard questions to answer, and sometimes you do feel like, I don't care, I just want to be stuck in one place. I will say something to you now, I will share something to you with you that is an interesting fact, right? I'm a doctor. I have 3 degrees from college. I'm like a leader in some kind of ways. But I'm also somebody who, when I was in high school, I ditched school a lot. I didn't make good decisions. And in fact, I dropped out of school, of high school. But it was a teacher, Mr. Castro, and another teacher, a couple other teachers, who really saw the potential in me and who encouraged me to find a different path. So I know that you're going to experience, because all adolescents do and all youth do, you know, you're going to experience the opportunity. You're going to have to make choices in your life. And sometimes you make the wrong choice. But even if you make the wrong choice, it's easy to get back and make the right choice. But you have to let people help you, and you have to be willing to help yourself, and you have to be willing to ask for help. So when I think about Hispanic Heritage Month, Latino Heritage Month, Mexican Heritage Month, any Heritage Month, what I think about are values, and what I think about are the things that I taught that were important to me. So when I think of Latino Heritage Month, I think about my family, my grandma, my aunts, my grandma, my aunts who came, you know, from Guadalajara, you know, to the United States, who had a hard life. My dad, who was fortunate, he was the last one to be born here. My mom, who came from a reservation and experienced a lot of hardship. And I think about the people who kind of didn't even know me, but who reached out to help me and to lift me up. And the people who modeled, like, you know, like Mr. Castro, that if we want a fair world, we have to work to make it fair. That doesn't mean it's going to become fair overnight. It just means if we want a world that is just and we want a world that is fair, we have to be willing to do that work. So I think I'm going to stop now, because I see there's 8 questions, and I'd really like to respond to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ledesma. And real quick, I just want to say tomorrow is Native American Day, so it's very awesome that we have you here for both. So thank you for that. And Dominic, I sent you an email, but feel free to go through the questions and look at the ones that you want to ask, okay?
So the first question is, what inspired you to take part in this grant?
What inspired me was really the opportunity to do all of the things that I was talking about, that I've been talking to you about. It was an opportunity to address a disparity, a health disparity that affected the lives of people. And really, I didn't know that much about dental health, but it was also the opportunity to work with students and to support students and to teach students a way of working. And it was an opportunity to work in the community and to work with families. And very importantly, it was an opportunity to work and to teach people to work from the value that everybody has strength. Every family has strength. Even, you know, we could look at a homeless family and we might think like, oh, they're just a homeless family. Their parents must be bad. But it could, maybe that's not true at all. Everybody has strength. So the grant allowed me to do the things that I'm really interested in doing, to work with students, to promote students, to try to create just a more just and a more fair world.
The next question is, what difficulties or challenges did you face as a Latina leader in higher education?
I faced a lot of them. I faced a lot of them. One of them, in higher education, even, it took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. And one of the reasons why it took me 10 years is I had 2 children while I was going through school. And so I had to leave school when I had my babies and when they were small, but I came back. But it was really hard for people to understand that. Another thing that was challenging was sometimes there weren't opportunities available to me that were available to other people. And I had to learn how to be guided by my values, how to be guided by I guess it's really how to be guided by my values, because you know, your feelings can get hurt when you don't have the same opportunity that somebody has. You can also get angry. But if you're angry, you kind of can't do anything to address it or to figure out how do you problem solve, how do you work around it. So a lot of times I experienced things that were not fair. A funny example is when I was writing my dissertation, which is like a book. It's a great big research project and it's super, super hard. And I was working and I was at work and we were having a faculty meeting, and it was summertime. So after the faculty meeting, I got on the phone to call my house, and my husband was at home, he was a teacher, and my kids were at home, summer vacation. And I said, oh, what are you doing? And they said, you know, they were just kind of getting up and they were gonna have lunch. And I said, oh, wait for me to come home. I have chorizo, I'll make us some chorizo, we can have brunch together. And I got off the phone. And another professor who was a higher up, heard that conversation, and he said to me, you would probably finish your dissertation quicker if you didn't go home and cook for people. And what he did not understand is that I really liked cooking for my family. It was like something I could do where I could show them that I love them and I care about them. And he just did not understand that. And so I could get mad at him for that. It turned out to be a big joke between the two of us for about 20 years. I would remind him of that. But, you know, he was just a little bit ignorant and he didn't know about my values. And I had an opportunity to teach him.
Okay, then another question is, when did you start to become interested in social inequality issues such as homelessness and the right to education for all?
Really, when I was like a middle school age person, like probably when I was about in 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade, and then certainly through high school, because I used to read the newspaper all the time, and I would and I would see the stories about the civil rights movement, about Martin Luther King. So I read a lot and I learned a lot. And then I started realizing that some of those things applied in my own life and to my own community and to my own family. I used to think that we were rich. Well, like, not that we were rich, but like, you know, like we were kind of good because we lived in our own house. We lived in a house and not an apartment, where lots of my friends lived in apartments, and there were lots of apartments where I lived. Then I went to some other neighborhoods and I saw like, whoa, these are very different houses. This is really, really different. So I think I started to learn that things were different. And then I started to learn about why they were different. My father worked really, really hard, but he never made enough money for us to live in one of those big fancy houses. But we lived in a house. So I think at an early age, you know, kids start to figure out what's fair and what's not fair, what's equal, what's not equal, if you look around. And fortunately for me, I had people in my life, teachers, who could help guide me and point me and help me learn how to think about that.
Another question is, you said Cesar Chavez was a Latino hero. However, he really hated illegal immigrants, and his union members went into the desert and whipped immigrants running across the border with chains and whips made of barbed wire. He later bragged about this. As obviously this is no way to treat human beings, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, those examples are really, are not examples that I'm familiar with or have heard about, so I can't defend them or, and I can't defend those actions. In all these years, I've never heard of those specific examples. Now, I will say that during the organizing years, there were times where, and there are times now, where Mexicans have anti-Mexican feelings, for example, and they have them a lot of times because they're encouraged to have them. Several years ago, there was a proposition called Proposition 187 in California, and it was going to deny illegals the right to have the right to, you know, do a whole lot of things. It was going to deny a whole lot of rights. And there were a lot of Latinos who supported that. And part of the reason why they did that is because they were being given messages that your life would be better if those bad people were not here. And there were commercials that showed people coming over the borders and doing terrible things. So even, you know, in our history, there have been times where even Mexicans, and you find this in any immigrant community, take an anti-immigrant position. And sometimes that's because sometimes that is because the information that they have isn't built on kindness. Remember I talked about kindness and caring? It's built on blaming and hating, right? So when people are looking to blame somebody for their circumstances, they often look at somebody who they think is less than them and somebody that can be pushed around. Have you ever heard the saying, Dad came home and he was really mad and so he kicked the dog, or somebody was really mad and they kicked the dog? Have you ever heard that? It's a terrible saying, but I've heard it before. And it's this idea that sometimes people are mad, so they push around and they take their anger out on somebody who's less powerful than they are, or who's more power, or who doesn't have power. And that's the same kind of idea. And right now, if you pay attention and you look at the news, you'll see that there's a lot of people. I saw a Trump rally and there was people right behind him that said Latinos for Trump. How do we understand that?
Have you ever been to a protest? And if you have, what was the protest for?
Yeah, I've been to several protests. I've been to lots of protests. I think one, and we just marked the anniversary of this protest, was the Chicano Moratorium, and it was just the 50 years, 1970. And it was the anniversary, right now it was just the anniversary. A Los Angeles Times news reporter was killed at that. And there was, it started off as a peaceful protest, and then it became, there were a not so peaceful protest, and there was a lot of police brutality at that time during that event. And Ruben Salazar was killed during, and few other people died as well. But that was a march. It was the third big march in East Los Angeles against the war in Vietnam. So it was against the war in Vietnam, but also, and it followed the East LA walkouts that had happened in '68, but it followed there were a lot of things that were not equal and things that were not fair within the East Los Angeles community and within the Mexican community at that time. And a lot of people organized and mobilized and stood up and took, marched on behalf. I've also participated in immigrant rights marches and anti-war marches, and generally marches for like social causes.
Was there a specific person in your life that helped you realize that this is what you wanted to do?
I think, I don't think I made like a choice like, oh, this is what I want to do. I think I did a lot of things and they ended up where I was in this path. When I was in my early 30s and, or approaching my early 30s, and I was thinking about what my career was going to be after I graduated with my bachelor's degree. And here's an example of going back to one of your early questions about like struggles that you had with higher ed, right? So I said I was a single, well, I didn't say, but I was a single parent and I had 2 kids when I finished my bachelor's degree. And I had a degree in history, and I really wanted to go get a PhD in history, but I didn't think I was smart enough. Obviously I got a PhD, but nobody ever encouraged me to get a PhD. So I didn't think I was smart enough. Plus I had 2 kids. I really wanted to go to law school and do American Indian law. And I really, really wanted to do that. But I had 2 kids, and I thought, how can I go to law school for 3 years with 2 kids? And I met people around that period of time who were social workers and who were activists and who were fighting for social justice. And they were kind of like Mr. Castro and some of the teachers that I had met. And so I decided to go to social work school because the social work, one reason was that it was a 2-year program, and I knew I could do that with my young children. And the other was that the values of the profession were very much, were very similar to my own personal values at that time in terms of respecting families and respecting individuals and recognizing that people had strengths and being committed to social justice and to fairness. So that's how I came to social work. And I did have some amazing role models and mentors at that point in my life, who just happened to be social workers.
Out of all your primary values, what do you think students should take away from this presentation?
I think you should take away, you should very, very seriously consider the degree to which you can care for others in your community and how you can do it. And certainly that will change. Dominic, for you, you're in middle school. What grade are you in?
I'm in 7th grade.
So for you, your caring might take the shape of reaching out, like kind of what you're doing right now. You're helping everybody in this audience. You're demonstrating caring. You know, for you, it might take the form of being a leader in your school and within your school background. Maybe it takes the form of being a leader within your family. Do you have younger siblings?
No.
Okay. But maybe it takes the form of being a leader and being a kind of a role model and a kind and a nice person to the students, your fellow students in your classes. So caring isn't like this big gigantic thing that like we wait till we're grown up and we have all these financial security and safety in order to be kind to somebody else. Caring is really starts with all the choices we make every day. And I think that, you know, many of the great revolutionaries and people who participated in activities to make the world a better place, including Cesar Chavez, whom I met, they also came from a place of love and a place of concern. And they made sacrifices in their lives because they did care that much. So I think caring is a very, very important value that's connected to social justice.
Did you participate in the walkouts? Can you also give us some background on the Brown Berets to understand their purpose and organization?
Well, that's a very, very complicated issue and a very complicated history. But back at that time, the Brown Berets were a group of students and young people who were gathering together, who were coming together to talk about injustices and issues that affected the life of the community and figuring out ways to address it. Now, the Brown Berets were what we would call a little bit more militant. They took on, you know, they wore not military uniforms, but they dressed in, they took on a particular style and a particular form of advocacy that was consistent with the way some people were beginning to advocate. People were moving away from the nonviolent methods that Cesar Chavez and that Martin Luther King and others advocated to becoming more militant. And so the Brown Berets are kind of, were in that category.
Are you glad those teachers encouraged you to go back to school?
I am. I often say that Mr. Castro was the father of my education because I was a high school dropout and I got into and this comes to opportunity, right? There have to be opportunities. I got into a special admission program at UCLA where they admitted 50 Black students and 50 Chicano students who were not qualified, but who had potential. And I was in the first class, and Mr. Castro really, really encouraged me to apply, to go. I had a couple of other people, other teachers who encouraged me. I applied. And up until Mr. Castro's death and when he died, I said that I was going to miss getting a phone call from him because he would always refer to me as Dr. Ledesma. He would say it like that. Dr. Ledesma, Sal Castro here. Mija, I have something. And he would always want me to do something. And there were two really important things, and that gets to the values that I've been talking about today and the caring, right? He called me Dr. Ledesma. That was his word, that Latinos got PhDs. Dr. Ledesma, and then right after that, he called me Mija, my daughter. And so, you know, that gets to that. That's where I started learning about that caring, right? If we're going to make a more fair world for you, Dominic, and for your classmates, and for the kids who are in kindergarten and TK and at home, and for my granddaughters, if we're going to make a more fair world, we have to just keep doing the work to make it more fair. And that's, I think, our heritage.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Ledesma. That we are at 6 o'clock. Dominic, round of applause. You did an amazing job.
Amazing.
I'm sorry that we didn't get to all the questions questions. Dr. Ledesma, if you don't mind, we'll email them to you. And if you want to answer them, you can if you have time, and then we can send them out. I do real quick want to plug at tonight at 6:30, Eric Nussbaum, who's the author of Stealing Home. It's about Los Angeles, the Dodgers, and lives caught in between. It's a conversation with LA Times columnist Gustavo Arellano. There is a link on our Facebook page that you can go to this tonight and just make it a whole evening of Hispanic Heritage stuff tonight. So please check out that. And then also next Wednesday and Thursday, we have our next two speakers. We have Michelle Siqueiros, who's the president of Campaign for College Opportunity. And I hear she's amazing. And then we also have George Pla on Thursday. He owns his own engineering business that he created from the ground up. He's written several books. And I'm very excited to hear from both of them next week. So Wednesday the 30th and Thursday the 1st, we're going to move you right into October. So please join us next week. Again, Dr. Ledesma, your talk about the seventh generation, is that right? That's going to stay with me forever. Thank you very much for that.
Good.
And once we shut this down, it like goes away. So it's always very abrupt for me. But thank you everyone for participating. Thank you. Dr. Ledesma and Maria and Dominic and Bill and Sebastian. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Thanks.
Stay safe.